evening. And
okay, welcome everyone to the second session of our STACS upskilling for web. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to tutors. If we just get a short hello tonight, we kind of introduced ourselves before, and there's also a short kind of bio on the Miro board that you can have a look at. So hello from Gordon.
hello.
And Colin.
Hello.
And Ian.
Hello.
Okay, so as we go through these sessions, if you are Xing or twitting or tweeting or whatever you do, then could you please use the hashtag upskill with STACS, okay? You should at the moment all be on the Miro board, the welcome board, and there's a bit of information there for you as we're going through the session. There are reactions in the top corner there. It's a wee celebration icon at the top. If you just hit that and then, you know, give us a thumbs up, give us a wave, give us a yeah, understand it, that would be really helpful, and give us a wee bit of kind of you know, sort of real-time feedback. So that's really important for us. Also, can we remind you that these sessions are recorded? So if you're staying on, we're assuming that you're okay with that. They're recorded so that they can be uploaded onto the STACS website, and people can then access them later, revisit them, or, you know, give the links to colleagues that can sign up to STACS and get access to them. Okay, so why the need for upskilling? We've looked at the N5 and higher course reports, and that's suggesting that teachers and pupils tend to focus sort of on the implementation skills, and the remaining steps, the analysis, design, testing and evaluation are often gone through very quickly and sometimes just bolted on independently, when there should be a flow through the 5 stages and reference back to the stages as you go through them. Okay.
There's also some fundamental skills that range across There's some fundamental skills that range of candidates across Scotland find challenging. So over this session, we'll get kind of look at what those are, and we'll give advice, and we'll get advice from you guys as well, as we build a network of teachers who are willing and happy to support each other, have a shared discussion, and most importantly, share the amazing resources that we are building.
Great. So the Google Meet session, just to, if you freeze, don't worry, it's really the audio that's more important. We're not going to use breakout rooms tonight, so there won't be any need for that. We will use the Google chat if you have got a question or you've maybe lost track of where we are. The two teachers that aren't presenting are monitoring that, so they'll be able to help you get back on track as to where you are. Now, on the left-hand side of each frame in the Miro board, there's a big pink cursor park, and if you could please, you know, you can look at the boards, but if you could kind of park your cursor there when we're talking through it, then it saves distraction for other people. So just over onto the big yellow, big pink bar down the left-hand side, that will be on each Miro board, and that's just parking your cursor. Okay.
It also means that when Tony's getting her gifts, she can see the content and tweet all about it. There are some of the slides that we've got, the frames, that are quite congested, just the way we've laid them out. We drill down into them, so at times one of us might take lead of the presentation. So essentially you click a present button and you get the option to then join that presentation, and we can lead you through the presentation. It saves you getting lost. So I'll take that off because I'm not presenting first.
Okay, so this evening's format and activities, we're going to be looking at the design, implementation and test of N5 functional and end user requirements, and looking at the use of divs with classes and ID. So that's where our sort of focus is tonight. And then myself and Ian will come back and we will lead you through the higher context of design implementation texting, and we'll use a nav bar with HTML and CSS to demonstrate that. And then finally, we'll have probably a quick look at JavaScript at higher, with very brief discussion of the N5 requirements for JavaScript at that stage. But remember, there are post-its if you want to post, any questions at any time, please do that.
And throughout the whole session tonight, we're looking at that golden thread that we introduced in our last session, the idea that the analysis leads through to your design, leads through to your testing, implementation and testing, and then your evaluation kind of goes all the way back. So it's all kind of based on comments that we've seen, as Maggie's alluded to, in the NAT5 and higher course reports from the SQA over the past couple of years. And we've kind of also designed the activity, the 3 activities tonight, in a way that you can then take them away and share them with your class.
Okay, so with that welcome over, I'm going to hand you over to Colin and Gordon to take you through design, implement, test of N5.
Thanks, Maggie. Yeah, so we've got the N5 bit tonight, which is your kind of starter, and then we'll go into the nav bar as your kind of main course, and then finish off with some JavaScript at the end. This is all based on the scenario that we introduced last time with the coffee shop. So we've put the background and we put the kind of some of the functional requirements and end user requirements on slide 1A, if you're looking at that one, hopefully. What we've tried to do is kind of continue this idea of the golden threads, and hopefully that kind of follows through from if you have seen our last presentation.
One of the key parts of the last presentation that we did was Colin's wonderful bit of work around scaffolding of clear functional and end user requirements. So, in terms of functional requirements, the website will, and for the end user requirements, the user will or should be able to, and using a suitable verb, a suitable feature, and a link to the context. And just picking up, just jumped into my head, one of the things we talked about last time was the difference between a function and a feature. So a function is what the website will be able to do. The feature is the thing it's going to use to do it. So the website will play a video about the opening of the coffee shop. The features, the video, the function is that it will play it and what it's about. I hope that kind of clarifies for anyone who are kind of about that at National 4.
So we're kind of following this sort of agile model where we're not trying to do the whole website or the whole web page. We're trying to group some of the requirements together and then design that bit, implement that bit, test that bit, which hopefully is a strategy that you can use with your own classes.
And by doing that, of course, we're laying very much a foundation for component building at testing and into advanced higher. It is exactly as Colin says. It's not about trying to do everything all at once. And we know, because we're the same, the pupils want to just get in and build everything. And we all know that they make that one small mistake right at the beginning, and it just causes everything else to collapse. Build a bit, design a bit, build a bit, test a bit is the kind of model we're going for.
So we're going to focus on the kind of the trickier bits of NAT5 as have been identified by the course reports. It's divs, it's classes, it's IDs, and trying to tease out when you would use them, how you would use them, why you would use them, and taking it from there.
And just before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, it's worth identifying that there is an interactive map in one of the pages we might end up looking at. We'll talk about that later at JavaScript. So we're not going to touch on that part just now, although it might pop up. And just a quick reminder, and we'll remind you again in JavaScript, at National 5, we're not expecting candidates to be able to implement JavaScript, just be able to describe its use and how it's working, but they are expected to implement it at higher. My personal take is I teach it at Nat 5 and get them to implement it because that's how they build the understanding of it.
So we're on to frame 1B, And that's where we've kind of tried to break down this one page. So we're just focusing on the menu page, and it's not even the whole menu page, it's just a bit of the menu page.
So we're going to start by just having a wee look at the wireframe design for the menu page. There will be other content on this page, the 3 images at the bottom, the links, etc. But taking that real component-based approach, that's kind of outside the scope of our focus at the moment.
So if we look at the HTML code that's kind of underneath the requirements, that's just the kind of boilerplate stuff. That's the very basic implementation of this part of this page.
I mean, it's effectively, it's 3 lists: the drinks, the cakes, and the food, each of which has a heading.
And that's where the divs come in. So we're dividing up the page into those 3 sections, into those kind of 3 categories: the drinks, the cakes, the food. And at this point, you can just go straight into a bit of testing, and you can say, well, actually, I've coded this much. Does it give me some sort of resemblance of the wireframe? Do I have the headings in? Do I have bullet points instead of a numbered list? Has it gone wrong at that point? Have I got 3 things in each of my lists? Is it coming underneath the right heading? And just doing that kind of first stage of testing to make sure that you or your class are kind of on the right lines with that.
And again, it's very much about encouraging your class to follow this agile model. Although we don't teach that until higher, it's really critical, I found, with the Nat5s to get them into that build a bit, test a bit kind of thinking. Try and get one of the lists working, the list of drinks, before moving on to the next list, the cakes. And thinking about something I was doing my hires, this idea of splitting a page into sections really does map forward to hire. And then, of course, they can just copy, paste, and edit.
Love a bit of copying and pasting. So if we look at the styling, so we've entitled this bit Styling Part 1. So we're adding some styling to the page.
We've made a design decision to change the background colors of different sections. None of that's defined in our functional requirements or end user requirements that we can see. So probably refer to other parts of the list we're not currently focusing on. But they're still important to note that they're being shown in our design. They're just not necessarily relating to exactly what we're focusing on just now.
And this is where the divs really start to come in handy. So we've got our 3 sections, our 3 divs, and then we can apply an ID to each one of those divs.
And remembering, of course, that IDs are the ones that are unique to a page, so can only be used once on a page.
And that's the beauty of this, that you're only going to have one section about drinks, so an ID fits in perfectly, one section about cakes, and one section about food.
Of course, we could use classes. They could very easily be done in the same way to produce exactly the same result, such as the joy of web.
So again, we're kind of going through that sort of design a bit, code a bit, test a bit. So we've coded it, now we're testing it, and you can see in testing part 1 where we've kind of picked out some of the requirements. Are we hitting those requirements? Are we actually doing what it is we're meant to be doing? And is it matching up with the design? Is it matching up with the wireframe that we've been given?
Oh, a bit of lip syncing issue there. We can also do a little bit of evaluation and check if we're still meeting the functional requirements, doing that referring back. It might not be necessarily recorded, but we're certainly evaluating and seeing, does it meet our golden threads?
So then we're on to adding a bit more to it. So we've got a bit more styling to be done in the kind of top right-hand corner of slide 1B, where we have an extra kind of feature to add. This time we've got our vegan.
And again, we're making a design decision and making some of the text blue so that it stands out.
So we've got a few different items on our lists that are going to be styled in the same way.
In this case, different items within the list.
So you've got tea, coffee, hot chocolate, all in that hot drinks list that are vegan, but within the cakes, it's the biscuit that's vegan and it's the slice of cake that's vegan. And that has nothing to do with me Googling last night to see if you can get, is vegan cake, is vegan biscuit a thing? Every day's a school day when you're doing these tasks.
And we focused on the cakes list because all the drinks are styled as blue text. They're all vegan. Again, that could be implemented in a number of ways. Apply the blue text color to the drinks ID and applying it to that div rather than to the individual items within that list.
So again, we're at this stage of testing. We've implemented our classes on all the vegan items, and then is it doing what we're expecting it to do? And this is what I always encourage my classes to do is make a wee change, save it, run it. Does it work? Does it do what you were expecting before you end up doing half a dozen different changes and only 2 of them actually working, trying to unpick what's gone wrong?
Yeah, it's so critical that they'll make 5 or 6 changes and then not know which one isn't working because they're all conflicting with each other. So constant testing, and again, that constant referring back to our requirements, those golden threads, ticking them off, highlighting them as we go along.
And if we move over to the next slide, we've got the kind of next steps for what would be coming next as part of this development. Obviously, the page is incomplete, but what we would be doing now would be working on the bits that are in yellow and trying to tick them off our list as part of that kind of agile methodology.
And I'm quite sure that Colin won't mind saying the page itself looks awful.
And my argument to that is they usually do at National 5. You're quite limited in what we can actually change about a page in National 5.
But this does lead us into usability testing at higher and applying the skills that we've learned in terms of divs, classes, and IDs to help us make better looking pages and sites.
And when a kid moans at me, "Oh, so why do you have to make these ugly looking pages?" I say, well, come back at higher. You've learned some skills to make it slightly better. I'm not going to say look good, but make it look slightly better.
So let's move on then into implementation and testing across the next section.
So there's kind of under the arrangement, there's 4 things that we should be testing with our web pages. So you've got matches the user interface design, the links and navigation work, the media works, and consistency. So what we want you to do is kind of comment on how you would actually expect a candidate to evidence that, to demonstrate that that has actually been tested.
And if you pop your IDs on the 1D screen, which is the next one over, we'll see we've got some stickies in place for you to grab, and just give us some ideas about how would you expect a candidate to give good, high quality evidence of each of those 4 areas. What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? What would it taste like? What would it look like is probably as much as I needed to say there.
You've got coffee shop on the brain.
Hey, I'm liking my coffee.
I want to try a slice of this vegan cake.
Vegan cake's quite nice if it's made right.
People are going straight in with screenshots.
How many?
And of what?
Yeah. Yeah, there's some good ideas coming through there. And I appear to have scrolled way off of the points I want to make here. Also, clicking on them and evidence the page loading. How do you evidence a page loading?
Maybe that's going back to the dial-up days where it like loaded kind of one line at a time and you could see it.
Rasterization, nice.
Nobody's testing consistency. That's good to know.
Yep. Screenshot showing elements for video and audio mid-play. Oh, that's a nice one. So actually grab a screenshot as the video or audio is playing so we can see the tracker being partway through. I like that.
That's assuming that they actually put the controls on it, so you've got the wee tracker going along.
Well, yeah. Also, we've got screenshots of website and pages and print of code. Screenshot of each page, not printouts. Yep, and not skewed, stretched, or shrunk. Screenshot beside the wireframe. Oh, I like that. Putting them side by side to show, yep, this is what I designed, this is what we made, this is what the design I was given, this is what I made. Really like that idea, particularly for advanced hire. I'm going to keep slipping that in there because I'm biased towards advanced hire. But yeah, showing the side by side comparison, so powerful. And one would absolutely be, oh, we've got lots of consistency now. Comments with the patient demonstrate understanding of consistency. So what would those look like? What would they feel like? What would they taste like? What would they, no. What sort of comments might we be looking for there? Just to get some ideas. Identify elements that are consistent. Yeah. Layout main features like navigation do not change between pages. Okay. And is that evidenced through screenshots and a comment? Is that evidenced through just expecting us to spot that? HTML, CSS code, screenshots of the web page, links in the same place on each page through screenshots. Yeah. Oh, pointing to how CSS rules are used to create consistency. I do like that.
I like the one for the navigation. Can an independent tester add comments that they've checked the links? Because how many times do kids say, yeah, I tested my navigation, it all works. And they just fire in some screenshots and be like, yeah, I clicked that and it got me to there. And then you look at the code and think, that hyperlink doesn't work.
There's not even a hyperlink there. What did you click on?
That paragraph. I kept on clicking it and the paragraph just nothing happened.
Yeah. Each H1, H2 have some similarity instead of mad color ranges.
Don't come to my classroom, you'll have mad color ranges.
It's not a Nat5 web page if it doesn't have mad color ranges. No, I get what you mean. You know, the H1, the H2 styling are consistent across. The other thing around H1 and H2 that I seem to spend a lot of time trying to convince kids of is heading 1 isn't the first heading on the page. Heading 2 isn't the second heading on the page. So heading 3 is not the third heading on the page. And heading 4 and heading 5 and so on. They're subheadings of each other, the level above. Trying to get some of our learners to spot that and getting the consistency there can be quite challenging. Yeah.
I think everybody's in the right ballpark, and I think there's some really good ideas there as well.
I think we're in the zone, and exactly pulling out that point you were making about links. And I'm going to use a higher phrase here that I think is worth getting in to Nat5. It's systematic and comprehensive. And I'm not going to say much more about it because I'm planting a seed for what's going to be talked about in the next section. We look at nav bars at higher, where we're building slightly larger websites. But I think it's worth getting in at Nat5. So as we look at that, yeah, it's just planting a seed for our next section. Some absolutely amazing ideas there. I'm screenshotting that. Good activity to do with the class there, I think.
There is a wee screen at the other side of that for any feedback that you have on this first section. If there's anything that you want us to go back to or go over again or kind of follow up at a later session, please feel free to leave a comment on that feedback screen. And then we'll pass you on to Maggie and Ian again, who are going to take you through the higher bit.
An absolute pleasure. We'll see you again later. See if Maggie and Ian are awake.
Yes, we are indeed.
I enjoyed that.
Very good.
I'm impressed.
I'm just going to get everyone to leave. Okay. And we're going to start with slide 2A, design, implement, and navbar. So this will be a familiar one that you've seen from our previous session. It's really just emphasising the golden threads again. So we've considered how an agile approach might look at N5 with Gordon and Colin there. So let's now look at higher. the golden threads are there to focus on a subset of the requirements, and we're going to develop a partial but not fully functional website to kind of demonstrate this. Okay, now these slides are pretty full. There's probably about 7 slides on each frame here, so, and they go row by row. So we're going to just take them through this. So as long as your cursor's kind of apart, and if you couldn't move anything around, just bear with us, and it will take you through an agile approach to creating a nav bar. Okay. So if you could present, Ian.
Yeah, will I jump into present, and then people can then come to me, and we can make sure that we don't lose people in the myriad of slides that we've got. They're really good slides, and they illustrate what we're going to talk about, but there's quite a lot of them. And you can leave tonight with a copy of them. So we know at Hire that the websites that candidates are expected to work on are a lot fuller. There's a substantially more amount of code, and Gordon and Colin were talking about design a bit, test a bit, design a bit, implement a bit, test a bit. That's all I say at Hire. Get a bit working, test it. So there is quite a lot to do if we're expecting candidates in the initial stages of learning to build a full site.
And although an assignment usually provides candidates with a sort of partial built website, they will need to have prior experience of all the techniques, because we're not party to what's going to come up, so they need to be able to access all of those techniques. So it's trying to find a way to help them understand what each one, the process you have to go through for each one.
And that's kind of where our first graphic comes in. Without a planned approach, it's a very long set of stairs to climb. Those stairs remind me of the stairs in Edinburgh between Waverley and Coburn Street. They're huge, and you just go, will this ever end? And the pain and just the frustration. And that's kind of weird. If our candidates are expected to go from design to the full thing working, that's kind of what they're feeling. So a typical workflow would be what we've got on the right, where we're kind of, as we've talked about, we're breaking it down into that agile sprints. We're designing a bit, we're implementing a bit, and then we're testing it. And we're not delaying all that testing to the end to discover it doesn't work. And we've got to unpick it all and see why it doesn't work.
Okay, now the thought of a challenging marathon, particularly for some candidates, can be really discouraging. And it seems like from the course reports that candidates are taking a sort of all or nothing view. If they look at the problem and think, no way I can do that, they're not even attempting it. So we have to consider, how can we do that to build their confidence, even to do small steps in it, and stop them from shying away from a question.
So that agile approach allows that, breaking it down, as I said, into the shorter climbs where we're designing, implementing, and testing.
Okay, now the challenge is really to identify what a process needs to, what subset of requirements do we need to make a good sprint or a good process. So some experience is needed to judge the order for the series of sprints.
So it's, again, just re-emphasising that a positive benefit of them having an agile method of splitting up, but then we need to make sure that we've given them the experience to be able to apply that mindset.
Okay, and if the learner can't complete all the sprint, if they struggle with that, they could still earn marks for those they can. And this doesn't just apply to web, that could apply to software and database in their assignments, and also in longer exam questions of 5-6 markers. They may then have the confidence to actually attempt a partial answer.
So what we're going to do is we're going to look at what this might look like in our higher version of the coffee shop website. So we'll move on to slide 2.
Okay, so in slide 2, well, the full end user and functional requirements for the higher coffee shop ran to about over 40 statements. So we're taking a partial view of that, and we're going to look at building a nav bar for this website. So the MVP, the minimum viable product, is basically a set of navigatable pages, but content free. So we'll have a couple of elements and a nav bar, and we can see this here in the requirements shown in the top half of slide 2. So the requirements there are all about the nav bar, both the end user and the functional ones. They're all about the nav bar.
And this is an easy to identify and pretty standard first base for any hire website that we're built. And the early launch of this current version of Hire, it's the approach that Greg Reed took and the resources that he produced for building the Cooking for Students website and the resources had. The rest of the content is page specific, relation to the layouts and interaction, and that can become part of subsequent sprints.
Okay, so what would we mean when we're talking about a sprint? So a sprint is basically a big main step in the development workflow, and we can then apply stepwise refinement to it, so their knowledge can cross over across the units until we get some kind of manageable task. So our first main sprint starts with the relevant set of requirements shown, and the goal of this sprint is to have all the pages created with navigation, but only common contents. We're not really going to put much content on here at all.
So you can see at the bottom of the slide there, we've kind of got the 3 sub-steps of this sprint. We need to kind of create our template. We need to add a bit of styling to the external CSS. We need to clone and generate the other pages in the site. And then last of all, we close with that test. Have we got a working nav bar that takes us through I think there's about 4, could be 5 blank pages in this website.
Okay, so if we could move on to slide 3, Ian, thanks.
And I realise I've overspoke.
Yeah, it's fine. Keep going.
So there are 3 common groups of items in the website at Hire. We've got the header, the footer, the navigation, and then the bit that's probably unique to each page, the 4th being the main. So we're going to start with the header and footer, and it makes sense to deal with the HTML kind of first, and then the CSS of these before the navigation bar. We'll look at the design, then the implementation, and then testing briefly. And then we'll get into the crux, which is the nav bar.
Okay, so we should be on slide 4 now on 2B. So the first step here is basically creating a kind of coffee shop template, if you like. And we can see we've got header, nav, main, and footer there, and we've got some code there that matches that. So that is our kind of first box, if you like. We've created the HTML template with common items, and we've even got the nav bar in there, or the semantic element of the nav bar there. It's not really testable. There's no content and there's not even any styling. So we've just got a kind of template there, and we can move now on to slide 5 to see a bit more.
So we see the design for the header and the footer elements to be added to the blank page. So we can then use that to go and implement it. So let's go on to slide 6 and have a look at the code for that. Okay,
so slide 6, this is mainly N5 level HTML code here. Only difference really is we've got a header and a footer tag, the semantic tags that are introduced at Hire, and we've also got some CSS which uses the margins, floats, and inline display. We're kind of going to assume pre-knowledge of them just now, but we will address them in the next session 3. But one thing before we go on, an email question on this, can you explain why the footer text is in white?
The footer text is in white because the footer has a rule applied to it that is in white, which means all elements in the footer are styled white, because the paragraph inherits the colour from the parent element.
That's correct. So even though the paragraph doesn't have any style associated with it, because it's within the footer element, it will inherit that information. Again, this is starting to sow seeds, you know, to talk about inheritance if they're maybe thinking of going on and doing advanced higher, and to pick up that kind of knowledge and that kind of technical language almost. Okay, so hopefully now we can agree that the page matches the design at this stage and the elements are displayed. So we're now going to slide 7.
Which I've lost because it's all the way over here.
Yeah, it's back to the left-hand side and down.
Left-hand side. So we've gone through the design implementation test process, but it's worth going on that idea of inheritance and a little bit how the browser uses HTML and then CSS to get this done. So the browser reads the HTML file, and essentially on the right there, I'll zoom in a wee bit, it makes this kind of the tree model of the elements and how they're kind of all nested inside of each other on the page. The browser uses the tree model to help draw or render the page later. This is called the domain object model tree. Every day is a school day. And we will come across this idea later when we're using the browser inspection tool, which is something that we'll cover in future sessions. So I think we're now moving off this slide.
Yep.
On to slide 2C. And we're looking at the first slide here.
Right, so we staying with kind of sprint 1, we're now ready to set up the nav element, and again we'll follow this sort of step by step through these slides, and we'll be asking you to look at some errors in the code. So we're going to sort of have that introduction of sort of kind of agile. We'll do one resprint, testing it, see if it works, seeing if we're getting what we expect. Okay, now at higher, the structure and styling of the nav bar is a bit more complicated. So if we can do it step by step and even give the kids a kind of wee mnemonic to remember it by, it might be that they even get some of the marks on it. Okay, so we go to slide 2.
Yeah. There we go. So we're kind of assuming here that we, as a teacher, are familiar with the idea of how a list can be combined with an anchor element to make a navigation list. As a first step, we copy and insert some standard HTML for a navigation bar list, and then we into the nav element and we customize it for the coffee shop. So it's kind of building that blocks for the learners.
Yep, we also set up a link you can see to the style sheet. We can then clone that template, followed by the customizing the page titles. And finally, we can test the navigation link. So it's almost our first test here, now that we've got the structure in place, is actually, well, let's test, let's see if those navigational links work. So now we're on to slide 3.
So this is what we would expect to see at that stage, okay? And of course, bugs can creep in even when you copy good code, but edit it, because you could delete accidentally part of it. So I think Maggie's going to take us through some buggy code, which is over here. Okay.
Can you take the rethink bubble, or maybe I'll take it away?
I think I need to give it a long press.
Yeah.
And then okay, long press that, and then I can get rid of it. He says, "Hey."
Yeah. So there are some syntax errors in this code, and again, you know, you could set up these kind of templates for your pupils to try and find the errors and maybe add some more in. But these are kind of common errors that you would find if they run it. They can see that their list has got a blank line in it, and one of their items on the list doesn't look like it has a hyperlink. So can they then look at the code and find out what's wrong with this? So there's some syntax error in the HTML. I might give you a couple of seconds, and then I'll ask Ian to spot them.
I can see the error in the screenshot.
Okay.
But I think that's the correct code.
On slide 4?
Yeah, I think we're on slide. Yes, we're on slide 4.
Yep, there is errors in that code.
Oh, found one.
Good.
Found two. They're really subtle.
Yeah, they're very subtle.
Very subtle. I was going like, I can't see them, but I found them.
Okay, so if we didn't spot the errors, I suppose to help your pupils, you could say, well, why don't you look at place and order? Because there's something wrong with that line. And if you look at that, there's been an E missed out. So it's href that's missing there. But the more subtle one probably is on the line before. They haven't ended their list item. They've just put another start list item in there. And again, that's a very common, for my pupils, I find that's what they do a lot. They don't miss out the end. So that, there's not helpful any error message there. It just displays that for us. So, that's you testing as we go, as we go. So once we've corrected those errors, slide 5 should then show you exactly what's happened. Okay.
Excellent.
But we've basically debugged it until we get what we expected. So it's good to have that, what you expect to see and what you actually get, even if you have to go through some debugging. Right, we're now on to slide 6. And slide 6 is maybe just a nice way of recording your testing. So they're testing as you go, sort of ongoing testing again, kind of links into advanced hire and what they have to do, the project style. So sorry, even Ian, I'm taking over here.
It's okay. But yeah, it's that idea of testing it. And although the nav bar doesn't look pretty, it's not got the structure we want, the function of it, the ability to click on a link and it take you to another page, that page at the moment might be blank because we've not copied the nav over onto each page, but that should work, that process. And this grid is a reflective way of showing, right, okay, I'm on the home page, can I get to the other pages and can I get back, kind of thing. So it's an example of showing the nav bar works. It doesn't look pretty, but it works.
Yeah. Okay, so now on to sort of step 2 of producing a nav bar. So we've now got the HTML elements in, we've got the links and we've got the nav elements in, we've tested them. So now we're now ready to style it so that we get a horizontal nav bar. And we've got a wee mnemonic here, BFBC. We're trying to come up with a word, but that was it. So bullets, float, block, colours. They're the 4 types of styling that they have to do in order to achieve this horizontal nav bar. So we're going to remove the bullets, debug and test it, float the options so it becomes horizontal, debug and test that, make the link a clickable box, debug and test, and then add some interactive colour styling. So you can see the steps there. So if pupils saw this as a whole, it might say there's no way I can do this, but if we can break it down into processes and small steps like this, then they might get some marks along the way.
Yeah, so the learners might find all the rules that they need to write for a nav bar quite overwhelming, especially when they're trying to put it all together. So this process of labelling each part and breaking it down into sub-goals, essentially, to achieve the nav bar, we're breaking it into these 4 sub-goals. And if some of our learners like mnemonics, the BFBC, sounds like a football club, that could help them remember that.
It does sound like a football club, actually. BFBC. Right. So
it's a big fat bar of chocolate.
That's Let's stick with that. Let's stick with that. Brilliant.
Yes, like that.
Because they've been given sample websites and whatever, there may be a tendency to simply copy and paste and customize it without really understanding what's happening and why styles are being applied and why they're doing these styling. Why is that happening? So we hope this walkthrough may help you to bring a better understanding for the pupils of what the code is actually doing. So we're now moving on to 2D and slide 1.
Yes. Okay.
So as I said, sorry, Ian.
Starting with
you want me to be quiet.
It's all right. Starting with the bullets, the big part of our chocolate bar. So we're going to start off with removing the bullets points from the list. bullet points are displayed for an unordered list by default. They are a style property. Style property of the UL element, unordered list, and the list element inherits the styling from the UL element.
Okay, now on to slide 2. And we'll start to see how we can actually take away the bullet points with this style. So it's a list style property. Now, the default value for list style type for UL is DISC disk. So that's why we get the wee circle. That's why we get the wee kind of bullet point. But if we remove that by changing the style to none, then the LI elements will inherit that new value. And therefore, the bullet points will be removed. So we're kind of introducing the idea of descendant selectors here, which I think pupils maybe always find a wee bit difficult to understand. So as long as it's a UL within a nav, then it will inherit the styling of the nav. And you can see the two different there. You've got a UL without the nav, and then you've got a UL with the nav.
And when I'm introducing the nav bar to my hire candidates, I essentially give them a page that we've got there. I give them a page with a nav bar, with the nav, we put the UL in nav, and there's already a UL on the page, and we write the rule UL list style type none. And it's, oh, I've lost both bullet points. Right, so we need to put in this idea of descendant selectors so that we get the UL within the parent element within nav.
If you don't have it in the nav, then any other unordered list that's on your website is going to lose its bullet points, and that's probably, you don't want that.
Yep.
Okay,
so we have
on to slide.
Sorry. The code. There we go.
Yeah, we're going to look at some buggy code here. So again, we've created it, but we're going to test it this time, and we put some errors in here. If we could maybe take away that bubble. Oh, I might be able to do it. Nope.
Got it.
Got it, great. So some syntax errors in the CSS code. Ian, how are you?
I've got it this time.
Good, good. There's actually 2.
There's actually 2. Yes, I've got them.
Good.
So I'll give people a wee second, and then I'll see if I'm right. The first one is a common fault that I find with my hires. When you start putting multiple elements on the same line, they get confused by descendant selectors, or in this case, what we have with nav and UL, the grouping selectors, because they put the comma there to list it. And then the other mistake is they've got muddled up between their hyphen and their underscore between style and type.
Yeah, so the comma is I think the most common one that I've seen. So okay, so we're now on to slide 4.
Yeah, so I think this should be the working one. Yes,
the working one, and we get now that our actual output is meeting what we expected. The descendant selectors are separated by space, not comma. So that can be a really good teaching point to show them, you know, the impact that doing that, or the lack of impact that it has doing that, and then, you know, showing them when you put it incorrectly as a descendant selector and not comma. Okay. So our next one, slide 5.
It's the fat bit of our chocolate bar.
Yes.
I'm now not going to forget that mnemonic.
Me neither.
So it's time for some floating. So in this portion, we are looking at getting the list from a horizontal, an uppity downity list, vertical, to a horizontal one. So we'll have a look at how we do that on the next slide.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, so you see you're in the pink there is the style that we've applied here. So we float left, we width 200 and text align center. Okay. By default, the display property of UL and LI items is set to block. That means that they occupy a full line, and so they stack up vertically, line after line. So we're trying to now put them horizontally.
Yeah, so the float left, it does two things. First, it has a similar effect to display line. The element only occupies the size of the content that it needs. In this case, the text of the link. The second, it causes the element to move leftward until it touches the border of the parent element. So in this case, UL, or the neighboring element to its left. That's kind of what shoves them up. And essentially what the LIs become is like a wee queue from left to right on the page waiting for something exciting. But they start at the edge of the UL item.
Okay, and the width property restores a gap, making the LI box around the text 200 wide. And finally, the align property just positions the text in the middle of the box, of the LI box. Okay, so we're now on to slide 7.
It's my turn to ask Maggie to find the mistake. So let's unlock. So same thing again. We've given some buggy code. And let's see if we can find what the errors are in this.
Well, I can see one center spelled wrong. Well, spelled right, but wrong for HTML. So that's why they're not centered. They've gone on to another line. So it must be something to do with the width.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of makes sense because the width or the body of this web page was 800. So if we've set each of them at 300, we've got 4 times 300, which is 1200. It's too long, so it's not going to fit on a line. So what ends up happening is that the last 2 hyperlinks get pushed onto the line below. So you end up with a kind of overflow onto the next line. So if we change that to 200, that gives us the 800, which should give us a perfect nav bar, as we see in slide 8. So we've corrected the errors there. We've set the text back to center, so they are in the center now, and we have the actual output we were expecting.
Yeah, I'm fine with when you're doing nav bars, there's quite a lot of maths involved.
Arithmetic, I'd call it.
Arithmetic, yes, sorry, yes. Basic arithmetic. Okay, now it's for the
Yes, so now we're
R.
on to, yes. Sorry, I'm taking ages to catch up. It's because it's not moving me at the same time as you. Okay, so we're on step 4 now, and we're going to create a clickable box around the text box. So this is to block, okay, so that the user doesn't need to just click on the text that is the actual nav bar. You can see the wee hand there. They could actually click beside it, and because we've blocked that text into the size of its kind of container, then you'll be able to access the hyperlink that way, and that makes it much more usable for a user. Okay, so on to slide 2.
So elements like paragraph, each one are blocked by default. And we've seen that they take up the whole line. In fact, they span out to the left and out to the right as far as the parent element. So if you've got an H1 inside the body, it takes up the full width of the body. If you've got the H1 in the main or in a section or a div, it takes up the full width of whatever parent element it is sitting within.
Yeah, so the A elements in this line of style here are children of the IL elements, which has a set a width to, we've set the width to 200. So when the display properties change from inline to block, the A elements expand to fill the LI parent element, okay? And that means the anchor or A elements are the clickable. So now the space around that text becomes clickable and not just the text itself.
You can kind of see that illustrated in the wee 2 images
Yes,
above
exactly.
the
2 images
question
here.
mark.
Yeah, the pink and the turquoise, it really demonstrates what happens there when that style is applied.
So more buggy code for you, Maggie. Slide 3, which is this way.
Right, so I'm just told this doesn't run, and I've got my display block. Okay. Am I not getting a hint? Oh, I see it, I see it, I see it. So I think we've missed out the A. We've got nav, UL, and LI, but it's the anchor that I want to be part of that.
Yeah, so it's that again, that idea of descendant selector getting what we want it to be. It's the A element within the list item, within the unordered list, within the nav bar that we want to enter. And so it is quite tricky because it's not a syntax error as if it were that we've seen in the previous. This is we've missed something out.
Yeah. So if we now go to slide 4, we've corrected the errors. We've included the A in as a descendant selector, and just tick there to say that they're all in the correct place and they're all clickable. So again, each time we're adding a style in, we're testing as we go. Okay. And now on to the slide 5, the chocolate part, are the colours. So basically, this is really to give the user a nicer experience almost. Ian, I think you're on the...
No, it's you.
Is it me? Sorry. Yeah, so users like to have interaction like elements on the page so that when they're moving around, they get some kind of response from it. So the mouse moving over these links will change the colour, and we're going to show you how to do that with a styling.
Yes, it's so what we've got here. So we can add our CSS style to the other elements, but the one that we're going to focus in here is the hover, so that when you roll your mouse over one of the character, it changes. And of course, we have got JavaScript to do that, but we can add a wee bit of responsiveness in HTML using the hover. So the hover refers to the positioning the mouse point over the element, in this case, the A within the LI, within the UL, within the nav, but we're not clicking on it. We're just got the mouse over the top of it, and this allows the user to know where they're going to click it. And you can add in whatever CSS you want in there, your background color, your color if you want to get rid of the underline or change the actual font itself. That in theory could go in there.
Okay, so the A hover is a kind of special kind of selector that's only applied temporarily when the mouse is positioned over the element. It basically switches off the rule when the mouse is no longer present, and any previous properties then apply again. So it only comes into action when the mouse is hovering over it, and otherwise the CSS rule simply flips back, and when the mouse is over it, the colours go back and forward between the ones we put in the style. Okay, so
even more buggy code?
I think it's your turn.
Right, okay. Oh, I've worked it out already.
Oh, well done, well done.
I've worked it out already. Is this going to give me the answer, or is this going to give me there's a syntax error in the code? Thanks. But I worked it out. It's the fact that the hover is that pseudo class, so we're missing a colon after the A.
Yeah. So again, this is quite tricky to notice, but you know, we have been teaching them their spaces are spaces are spaces, but this is one where you could make the case that it's a special selector. It's a wee bit different from the others, and that's maybe why the syntax is different. So it's important maybe to highlight to pupils that a simple typo can cause things to go wrong and hard to spot unless you're looking carefully and you know what to expect.
And I think this is, I'm just thinking about the IDE that this screenshots come from, the one that begins with R that we won't talk about. Syntax highlighting as well can help them sometimes spot the error, because I know that when you do a pseudo class in this IDE, it changes the class to a different color, and that's just getting them to know those different wee tricks.
Yeah. So slide 8.
Slide 8.
We've got them all done, and we have It's hard to show that in a flat screen, but it was working. You can see from the home one that all the links and the pages are affected.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we've got one. Oh, and there we can see that's kind of that's us essentially recording that we've done everything. We have checked that the homepage, everything that we can actually use it. We can check they've got no bullet points. We can check we've floated. We've got a block click and we've got hover click. You get it working on one page, and then we can implement.
Yeah, that was a bit of a trick. I'm sorry, but I think you could take those slides now and use them and maybe add more errors in and have you know, and I think it will develop the understanding of it. So if we go to a kind of summary slide on slide 2F.
Yep. I think we've got yeah, so it's that sub-goal. I'm now that sub-goal labeling allows them to break the project down. We've now got that lovely acronym. Thanks to Kirstine.
Yep.
Big, flat, fat, block, chocolate. Never, or the football team BFBC. And it's a way of kind of looking at navbar. It could be an unplugged activity. But amazing. So yes, Kirstine, I think actually these slides that we've been working through are essentially a Google slide deck that we've put together.
Yeah,
so,
it is on a Google slide deck.
I think it was living in this presentation, but I think it's there. So if you want to nab it, I think you might be able to nab it, but I'm sure STACS, Brendan and the team will share it. I'm going to stop presenting so you can stop following me. Brendan and the team will share it, how they share all the stuff for session 1.
Okay, so we've presented an example of a kind of agile approach, which could help learners develop confidence, you know, even if they manage to get the bullet points off and get them in a horizontal bar, they're still going to get marks for that. And you know, maybe it'll let them attempt a kind of partial approach and not look at it as there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. I don't know where to start. If you have these sub goals and we testing points as we go along.
And that idea of sub-goal labeling allows them to kind of support that recall and understanding of the different bits that they need to do off that extended sequence, which for some of our learners could be quite challenging and quite complex.
Yeah, so and lastly, I suppose we've tried to exemplify good practice and just not telling them what the code should be, but actually exploring how the code works.
So whilst Maggie and I go find a dark room to lie in, I know if you've got any feedback or thoughts, that feedback too, which is at the end of our run, pop any feedback, and hopefully Gordon's awake and
sorry, Ian. No rest for the wicked.
I was going to say, I've not scrolled down to that far in the script, but I found out that I'm speaking.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, please do the feedback. And give Ian a second or two to drink some water, breathe in some oxygen, as we prepare to move on to the next section.
All right. I don't mind a bit of JavaScript.
And while we were talking, whilst Ian and Maggie were going through that, I tried to see if I had a big fat bar of chocolate. I've got a big fat bag of chocolate. Does that count?
That does.
Yes.
And you can get a post-it note and write nav on it. and every time one of your pupils gets a bit right, you can throw a bit of chocolate at them.
We're a health and well-being school. We would throw apples at them.
But it's better for my well-being to get chocolate.
Mentally, yeah.
Yes.
Also, coffee, and lots of it.
Not the students.
Kids at my school go to the Starbucks just next door and bring it in first thing in the morning. Sitting in class with our latte macchiatos and
Well, we have a barista in the school.
Sorry?
We have a barista in the school.
There's a coffee shop in our school here, apparently, on this website.
Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant. And the 6 years run it, it's fabulous.
Oh, you'll have to invite us along for a visit.
Yes, come and see.
Absolutely. Do they need a website?
Well, one of the advanced hire, that was a project last year. It's great. It's a good project.
That's a good project.
Yeah, it was.
Did I mark that one?
Did you?
I think I might have. Might not. I can't remember. So long ago.
And so many.
Right, will we get started on the next section?
It's over to you, boss. You're leading this one.
So it says here in the script, by far our easiest section, and I agree JavaScript's it's straightforward ish. We're going to look at JavaScript.
And of course, as I said earlier, just a brief reminder that there's no expectation on candidates to implement JavaScript at Nat 5. They should be able to recognize and correctly name on mouse over and on mouse out events.
And then at higher, we introduce them to actually implementing on mouse over and on mouse mount, on mouse out, along with on click. This is also a really nice way at National 5 to introduce the idea of functions. And I was doing this week and linking in National 5 to STD predefined functions with parameters, as some of the JavaScript functions will carry information passed to them.
Yeah, and I think the critical part with these, particularly looking at some of the comments in the reports, is that the three events, on mouse over, on mouse out, and on click, they work much as expected. And we really just need to reinforce to the candidates that it's those specific event names that need to be used in the question paper or the assignment. They could implement it, but we'll all have seen prelims where the candidates just put down mouse over, mouse out, and that doesn't really give the focus that we're wanting.
Yeah, they're looking for the exact same, the exact mouse event, and that's the same at higher. My candidates I get annoyed when I mark it wrong because I've not put it down correctly.
But that's what will happen in the final exam.
Exactly. Yep.
So let's have a wee look at the design, implement, test, the design a bit, build a bit, test a bit. At kind of Nat 5 and higher levels in the coffee shop web page, as I said earlier, I get my Nat 5 guys to girls, pupils, that's what I'm looking for, to implement JavaScript, because that's what builds the understanding of it and helps them in the final exam.
So if we're looking at the frame on topic 3A, so we're looking at the functional requirements, the end user requirements in our kind of golden thread diagram. We can see that in the end user requirements highlighted in yellow, because it's the bit that we're looking for, there is a need for an interactive map that shows the location of the coffee shop when the user points their mouse at the map, resetting to normal when their mouse leaves.
Of course, that's not quite as horrendously described in the actual end user requirements, but we'll expand on that a wee bit. One of the questions I often get asked by pupils is, how do you design that? How do you design interactivity? How do you draw something that's interactive?
Yeah, that's quite a good question. One option could be to draw different parts of the page, but then that's doubling the work. One way around it is to show on our design where we are going to have that JavaScript with a simple explanation of the initial state, what happens on the event, and what happens on the other event. And then from that, very, very clear to someone what needs implemented from that design.
So if we jump over to topic 1B, the design, you'll see we've grayed out a whole bunch of stuff that would just be the kind of normal design. Here's my wireframe, here's things pointing at it, explaining what's going on. And we're really focusing in on the div that's containing the our location. It's got a heading 2, it's got a paragraph. We can see it's a class. of info applied to the div. And if you move those grey boxes out of the way, you'll see other classes, you'll see other IDs. They're there, but I've blocked them out so we can really focus in on what we're wanting to focus in on here, which is the JavaScript. That whole idea about showing interactivity, I think, is really important in how we describe it. Later on, and coming back to my little advanced hire hat on, candidates are asked as part of their user interface design to show underlying processes. And this interactivity is, in essence, an underlying process. So we can see that it's an interactive image. We've tagged it as an interactive image, and then just 3 simple bullet points. Initially, what's going to happen when the page first loads? It's going to show map.png. It's then going to move to mouse over map_x.png, which is the different version of the image that's got an X on it showing where the coffee shop is. And on mouse out, it's got map.png. Could we be a bit more specific there and say on mouse over, on mouse out to reinforce those? Yes, but then do we cross the line from design into implementation? I believe that's a question to the user. So it's really nice to tie those levels back to show those underlying processes as part of the user interface design.
Yeah, it does that kind of process, and looking forward to the implementation, we can see that the image has the 2 events, as you pointed out, Gordon, the on mouse over and on mouse out, and we can kind of envisage with a underlying knowledge of JavaScript what that might look like, what functions we're going to require to implement that. And I think on the next slide. Nope, I was hoping we might have the implementation there. But what we've got is the link to the completed website on that platform that we won't name, that you can look at for that. And we alluded to the idea of the functions and the parameter passing of the functions. And I was talking with my higher class this week because we're doing software and we're doing a wee bit of retrieval, and I put a JavaScript function in, and they could now see, because they have done parameter passing higher, they can now see that actually when you do it, particularly in this example, when you do the function call on the image to get it changed to the other image, that it requires a parameter, because we need to know what it is that I'm changing. Most of the case it's this, and then in the actual function, we need to know what the formal parameter is that's going to be changed. And most of the time, I've seen examples of X. I don't like X because it's got no meaning. So I can always go for like this graphic in the context where we're changing a graphic. And at higher, that's one of the 2 things we're going to be asked mostly to do. Make a graphic bigger or smaller, or change it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just popping the
Code in. Yep.
The code in, so it's on the implementation slide, as we mentioned earlier. Why is that only grabbed part of it?
Do you want me to grab the other bit so you can talk?
No, I'm literally on it right now.
All right. Okay.
There we go. So it really is, as we're kind of alluding to there, that kind of link between the how do you do that? There we go. The link between the bit in the script tags, which normally sits up in the head, not as my class were doing earlier today and putting it down at the end after the closing HTML tag. We really want it up there, and having the idea that we've got the on mouse over, the on mouse out, and they both call functions, passing in a parameter of this, so it's referring very much to the element that they are living within. In this case, the image element, and then we've got the X. My screen's just gone goosed, so I can't actually see it. We've got the function map with X. That's helpful. My Miro board's just gone blank.
I think it's your camera's also turned itself off.
Well, that's no bad thing for everyone else.
So maybe your internet.
I'm back.
You're back.
So we've got Yeah, on the mouse over, we call a function called map with X and passing in this being the element that's living in the image element, and it's collecting the parameter this graphic. Now, at this point, I'm trying to say it without using the word this. At this stage, you could introduce, and I tend not to with the NAT5, but you could kind of introduce the idea of actual and formal parameters. And certainly when I'm doing this with my hires, if I'm doing this before software, I would mention that kind of idea just to plant a seed. I would normally do this after software. So again, I'd be referring to it in that context and just drawing and making connections there. And we can see we're passing in the parameter, this graphic to the function, and this graphic, again, the element, and we're changing the source attribute to the different image. And similarly with the function map, which is just switching it back on the mouse out where that gets called, it's passing that parameter, the element name, into this graphic, and then setting the source of that to media/map.png. And of course, we also need to test and consider how we would evidence testing of interactivity.
On a piece of paper that's going to the SQA.
Yeah.
Because in class, we can obviously see the physical demonstration of it actually working, but the SQA markers aren't going to come into every school. So I suppose the way to evidence it is a screenshot of showing the before the mouse goes over or after, and then the actual when the mouse is over the text in this case to show that happens. Now, we all know that can be fudged. But that's where the marker then goes and looks at the code and see, does this code actually produce that result?
Of course, this raises the age-old question of how much evidence do we actually need? So again, let's think about that element of testing. So we've looked at nav bars tonight, and the testing for higher, I've lost a bit, covers four kind of areas. First of all, there's input validation. There's the navigational bar works, very relevant tonight. Media content displays correctly. We've talked about that in NAT5, but now let's think about that in terms of interactive media, images that are changing and switching, and compatibility testing, which we've not really talked on tonight, but just curious to get some ideas how we think about it in terms of different screen sizes, different browsers, and all those kind of things.
Although I think we could probably ignore input validation for now, as in our future session, which is I think in 2024 now, we're going to look at HTML forms. So we'll cover input validation in that. So for now, really, how would we evidence the testing in relation to navigation bars, the media content, and compatibility? You've got all those wee sticky notes. Give us your ideas.
Yeah. What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it smell like? What would it taste like? What would high quality evidence of these things working actually look like? When I do this with my candidates, I ask them, how are you telling the story that shows me it works? And if they just write a paragraph, that doesn't show me. They give me some screenshots, that shows me. If they show me it on the screen, say that's fine, but I can't send that off for marking. How are you convincing the marker that this thing that you're saying works actually works? Not that we don't trust you, but the onus of proof is on you.
Yes, you've got to prove that it works. We don't assume that it works.
Everyone's jumping to input validation. It's the one we said that we'll focus on next time when we do forms. Got some media content displayed correctly, but
yeah,
screenshot of the web page.
Print out of the HTML CSS code.
Yeah. Not the JavaScript code. I mean, it would be embedded within the HTML page, but
I mean, you could get a very smart hire that decides to do external JavaScript.
yeah,
They'd be weird. But we know we've got grid link shown in topic 2 this evening for navigation. Yeah, that idea of that almost 2D array of can every page get to every page.
yeah, I call it the the nav testing matrix. I've just made up tonight as a phrase.
The use of different browsers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we all get stuck into the browser that the school tells us to use, or the one we like using, Chrome or Edge.
Yeah,
but
yeah. And whilst you'd like to hope that most websites nowadays look the same, there are differences between them.
Yeah.
Using iPad and PC.
Using iPads and PCs, yeah.
I suppose if you're building it in an online environment, then yep.
Including that one that starts with an R that we don't name.
Yep.
We can, you can. I have been known to allow candidates to open it on their phone and see what does it look like on there. You go, it looks awful. Come back for advanced hire. We'll show you how to do media queries. It's like Colin uses it to draw in from Nat5 to hire and do the same. That's what it's all about. Use browser tools to preview what page looks like on another device. Brilliant, yes.
I've learned something tonight. I did not know that browser tools could do that.
Yeah.
But I'm currently looking at the Hawks Hill High School coffee shop on an iPad Air.
There you go. That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And most of them, it looks all right.
Yeah. See, we're here to learn as well.
Exactly.
So in terms of, I mean, we're focused specifically kind of on the JavaScripty bit there, the media content displaying correctly. Ian mentioned earlier the kind of before and after. So before putting the mouse on and before and while the mouse is over, or whatever it is that happens to be the combination that you're looking for. Again, yeah, it can be fudged, but I think having befores and afters is really important. And that tracks forward to a lot of what we're looking for at later levels as well. Into database, where we're looking for screenshots of, here's the data before an insert query, here it is after an insert query. Here it is before an update, after an update. Here's a list before it's sorted, here's a list after it's sorted. Getting this whole idea of testing about showing how the thing has changed can quite often be a really important tool.
I suppose the other JavaScript thing we can be asked to do at higher is show hide content. So if I've got four things that I'm showing hiding, do I then need 5 screenshots?
Very possibly.
To prove that to make it look like it works.
Yeah. But then, of course, the marker is not going to really look at those screenshots. They're going to look at the code.
Exactly, yes.
But is it needed to tell the story?
Yes.
I think so. Okay, can we maybe ask that because we're time's running.
Oh, we're very, yes.
If we can maybe get some feedback on that little JavaScript session, if there's more that you want about it, then please do let us know, and then we'll hand over to Colin to bring us into our plenary.
Ian, I'll do this bit.
Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah.
To be honest, there's not really much to the plenary because I've just skipped to the plenary slide and it's quite sparse.
There's a reason for that.
All will become clear to me as well.
As you read the script.
Maybe just go to feedback forward then.
No, I just.
I mean, as you look through the script for the plenary, it does become.
Just go for it.
Yeah, it's the worst that can happen is we confuse them.
Yep.
No more so than we are already.
Yep.
So there was a survey that was sent out, and we are looking at the information from that survey, and we're using that to help us kind of put together what's coming next in the session. So again, it's really important that we get your feedback, just like you're doing just now for the JavaScript, and as you have done for the Nat5 stuff and the navigation bar stuff as well.
Yeah, so if there's any ideas that have sprung to mind tonight, just put it in feedback 4, which is beside the plenary frame. If there's anything else you want to know or know more about or want cleared up, please just put it in the feedback 4. That would be great.
And again, it's just about supporting each other. As you've seen tonight, we've been learning things as we've been going along through this as well. So if there's things that you're doing in class that you think would be useful to share with others, or if there's things that you've used from tonight's session or previous sessions, then feel free to share them and let us know.
I mean, you might be teaching the web topic soon, or you might want to do some kind of consolidation exercise, then please feel free to use the coffee shop website scenario. I saw in the feedback from Ian in my session, someone said they really liked the errors and they were going to use that as starters. That's a great idea. You know, if you're going through web, fantastic. It's a great idea for starters to have errors up on the screen. So, you know, you've got as good ideas as we have. So please put them in the feedback and we can help each other with this. Okay.
So again, if you've got anything that's kind of similar that you want to share, if you've got starters that you use already that you want to share with us, or you've got things that can be adapted for other languages, or even if it's web stuff that you think would translate into software development, whatever, then STACS is there to kind of help support that and hopefully facilitate that as well.
Yeah, it can be at any level, whether even up to advanced higher. If you want to put anything in, we will share a PDF of this board, and I think the slides from the kind of error thing will be available as well. So that will be available for you, and also a recording of the session.
This session, as well as the previous sessions and the software development session, which was last night, and the database session, which is going to be Thursday night, I think. If you can't make any of them, then all the materials will be available through STACS.
Okay, at the end of each session, we will hold we'll hold on for a bit and have a sort of after party for half an hour. So if there's any questions you want to hang on and ask us, then feel free to do that.
And the kind of last thing to say in the plenary is just thanks for your time this evening, and giving up another precious evening to try and hopefully learn something new, or at least get a different sort of slant on something that you've seen before. Okay,
next time we thought we'd be sharing our HTML forms and some float stuff, which we all love. Also looking at the input validation on forms. But is there anything else you would like us to do in the web? Do you want some PHP content in there to line up with advanced higher? Or do you want more in what we've covered tonight, or more in evaluation? You know, it's what you want and what you would benefit from that we want to present, not something that we just think people want. You know what, it's better. It's like your pupils, you need to know what they want to know. So please give us the feedback as much as you can. I think that's us.
I think that is us. So thanks to everyone that's joined us this evening.